Welcome to the Tattoo Marketing Podcast. On this week's episode, our guest is Tobe Brockner, an entrepreneur who I personally have looked up to for many years and has perfected the system of using a virtual assistant. We talk about how shop owners can use them, how to find the best ones, the cost, and what you can expect. So if you're a shop owner who could use a little extra help but doesn't want to spend $3,000 to $4,000 a month on a personal employee in your shop, this podcast is for you. Enjoy. Since I met you, I think the first time we met, I was coming down to Steve Larson's event. If I remember correctly, we got
Mhm.
fleet, and you were telling me years ago about the process that you were using to hire a VA, and I actually used that process to hire a few for myself. Um, Certainly since then, you've refined it more. Because I mean, that's been probably 4 years, 3, 4 years, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I first started looking into VAs. It was a long time ago because it was when I read the 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That was the first time I think I kind of ran across that, and that was probably back in that was a long time ago, 2008, nine, somewhere in there. And I never really took it that seriously. Like I tried to hire some VAs before. Um, what I made a bunch of mistakes, like people tend to do when they're trying something new, and I screwed up a bunch of different ways, and so over the years I've just kind of tried to refine this process, and it all kind of came to a head where my hand sort of got forced back in 2017, 2018 at a marketing agency, and it was like I was just sick of doing it. I had like this weird mini revolt going on with my employees. I had like 10 employees, and they had some weird notion that we were running a democracy, and we were not. We were running a benevolent dictatorship at best. And I was like, all right, man, you guys want to try to be big boys and girls and call shots, go start your own thing. And so I just shut the whole thing down and went solo, but I still had clients that I had to service. So I had hired some VAs for that, just to do client fulfillment stuff, the graphic design, video editing, running, building landing pages, whatever. So I did that for a couple years, and in early 2020, like right before the pandemic, I had a real estate agent, a mutual friend, introduced me to a real estate agent. Said, "Hey, she needs help with marketing. Can you help her?" And I was like, "Sure." Well, so I met her, and she hired me and started doing marketing. And then she was sending me work, and I was getting it done. I was having my VAs do it, and then I would just send it back to her. And she was like, "Hey, how are you doing this so fast? Like, I don't understand. You're doing this by yourself." And I was like, "Well, I'm not doing it by myself. I have a VA." And she says, "What does a VA loan have to do with this?" I was like, "Not a VA loan, you dummy, a virtual assistant." She had no idea what I was even talking about. And so there's that sort of led to, she's like, "I want a VA." So I showed her my process of how I hire them and vet them and train them and everything. And she was like, "You really need to structure this and sell it because it's really valuable." And because I had just been people like you, man, you came, I had people come along and say, "Hey, how are you doing this?" And I would just show them, "Here's what I'm doing." So I kind of formalized this process and structured it and turned it into like a 6-week training. Because most of the VA companies out there, my competitors, they have a lot of focus on the VA. Like, we'll train the VA for you, we'll bring somebody in and place them in your business or whatever. And there's almost no attention given to the actual business owner of, well, okay, now I have a VA, but what the hell do I do with them? Like, how do I train them? How do I manage them? How do I communicate with them? How do I pay them? So there's all these questions that the business owner had to learn on their own. And so that was what the point of the program was that I created. We call it at Katuva, my company Katuva, we call it Empower Plus. And it's basically a 6-week program. It's 4 phases, and it takes a business owner from start to finish. So from the hiring to the training to the managing and communicating. That's what we do.
Got it. Got it. And there's one thing I do want to jump on that you just said, but before that, for people who don't know what a VA is and have never used one, could you explain it?
Yeah, VA it means virtual assistant, so it's a remote worker. The pandemic actually did me a favor in that regard, where it normalized remote work. Because before, the big sort of hesitation that I would get and pushback from clients is, well, I don't know if I could manage somebody remotely, and then they got forced to do it by the pandemic, and so we learned this new skill set, which was great for me. But a virtual assistant is essentially just someone that does all the back end admin or marketing or managing of your calendars, your email, or coordinating with clients or vendors or whatever, anything that doesn't require them to be in the same room, which is like 98% of the business, they can do virtually. So we hire virtual assistants almost, well, I won't say almost, I will say exclusively from the Philippines. And the reason we use the Philippines is because those human beings are built different over there. They're some of the most loyal, the hardest working, most ambitious people that I've ever met, and I've hired all over the world. I've hired from India and Pakistan to China to Bangladesh, Vietnam, Eastern Europe, South America, even Peru and Argentina. So I've hired all over the world. And I keep going back to the Philippines just because the people are so different. And one of the things that makes them very different is their loyalty. I mean, and that's something you can't buy. It's either you have it or you don't. And they have it in droves. And so, yeah, that's basically what a virtual assistant is.
And then one of the big upsides to it is the cost of living over there. So for you to hire somebody full time, it's only what, 800.
Yeah. So for us,
something like that.
You can find a range of pricing of wages, and you kind of get what you pay for. And it's inflation is, hit this market a little bit. Back in the day, I was getting full time people for $500 a month or something like that. I mean, that's those days are kind of gone. Those were sort of the glory days for us anyway. But my company could too. So because we asked as a placement, we're almost like a staffing agency. So you basically hire us, and then we, part of that Empower Plus program is we have already vetted and done background checks on the VA pool that we have. We've assigned them a task to make sure they know what they're doing. So we've already done all of the like heavy lifting of the upfront hiring portion. And so when you come in, we based on the skill sets that you need and a disc profile, we have you take a disc, or we have the VA take a disc. We match you up with 3 potential candidates that you then can interview. And we're on the call with the client. So we all do it over Zoom, and they interview them, which we also show the client how to interview them. We train them how to do that. We give them sample interview questions, all kinds of stuff. So we kind of really hold their hand through the whole process. Anyway, they make a decision. They then pay us, Kajuva, and if they hire the VA for part-time work up to 20 hours a week, it's $695 a month. And if they hire them for full-time, it's $1,350 per month. It works out to about $8 an hour is what that boils down to.
That's pretty awesome, especially compared to what people want in the USA for, I mean, you make $16 at McDonald's now, and people want, $20, $25 an hour for a very basic skill. And you got this pool of loyal individuals over there that you can hire.
Yeah, like I actually just promoted she was my executive virtual assistant. She was kind of like my assistant. Her name is Mylene. She's been with me for 3 years. I promoted her to director of operations. She basically runs the entire back end of my business for me. And I pay her a premium for that, but I'm paying her, if I were to find the equivalent person here in the United States to do the job that Mylene does, I would be paying them a minimum of $70,000 to $80,000 a year. And Mylene's, I'm paying her about $15,000 a year. So it's just to put it kind of in context as well. When I was running my agency, my monthly payroll is about $40,000 to $45,000 a month. I fired all of my employees, hired VAs to replace them, and my payroll went from $40,000 a month to less than $4,000 a month. So it was like a tenth of a cost. I streamlined a little bit. I didn't need as many people, but had I been doing that from the very beginning, I'd still be doing that business because I would have, I'd be making a ton of money. My net profit margins were now way, way up. So yeah, and sometimes clients will say, hey, well, are we taking advantage of these people, by paying them $8 an hour? And the thing is, over in the Philippines, $8 an hour over there is like upper middle class. It goes a long way. I was looking at, I'm hoping to travel to the Philippines in November, December of this year. And I was looking around for an Airbnb, and I found one in this little suburb area of Manila. It's called Makati. And it's this high-rise building. It's a penthouse suite on the top floor of this building, like 3-bedroom. It sleeps like 8 people. It's awesome. I mean, it had pictures of the views and everything. I was like, man, this is spectacular. $59 a night to stay there. And it's like a comparable place here in the United States would be $500, $600, $700 a night.
Yeah.
So it's just unreal, the cost of living difference over there. And, good for them because we're paying them actually above market wages, and good for us because we're paying way less than market wages here. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds kind of perfect. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up is a lot of people, when they first hear about this, are like, oh, you're taking advantage of this country. But this is more money that they would make than they would make with the skill set they have if they were hired by a company over there by far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you take somebody like Mylene, for example, so Mylene worked at she was basically like the manager at a movie theater, not just one. I think there were multiple movie theaters. She was kind of like their operations person there. She had about, I don't know, 30 or 40 employees she was responsible for, and everything. She had been working there for 7 years, 10 years, whatever it was. Everything was going great until the pandemic happened and she got laid off. And she was like, I didn't really know what to do. So I wanted to try to mitigate that risk going forward. So I decided to do virtual assistant work. And in the Philippines, it's a pretty big industry now. There are about 2 million remote workers that self-identify as remote workers in the Philippines. If you think about Metro Manila has about 24 million people. So almost 10% of the population is identifying as a remote worker. Wow. So it's a growing industry over there.
Yeah, it does seem like it's become a much bigger thing over the last few years. What are some of the things that you see people hire them for? I mean, I know you and I were talking before this about, like, I think one of the things would be very beneficial for tattoo shop owners, especially if they're doing some kind of paid marketing, is when a consultation request comes in, them reaching out, having the VA reach out because they can do it immediately versus the shop owner who's tattooing, or even if there's a front desk person that's with the customer and it takes them 2 hours. And by that time, consultation request has already got a hold of another shop. So I think it would be great for that. But what are the other things that you see people using them for?
Yeah, and I mean, the list is almost endless. So we actually created an ebook, and I'll give you a link to that if you want to share it with your listeners. They can download it for free. It's called 300 plus tasks a VA can do for you in your business. And it really gets the juices in your brain flowing about what's possible. Most people don't even know what's possible. So, I mean, you think about all of the little things that you do every single day, and you put it into context. You say, okay, look, maybe I got to sort through these emails every morning, and I got to see which ones I need to respond to and whatever. If leads come in through my email, I need to be able to sort those. If, requests from vendors or whatever, or if it's just spam stuff, whatever. And let's say it only takes you 15 minutes a day to sort through that and organize it. Well, 15 minutes a day is 75 minutes a week. And if that's an hour plus, a week, then you're looking at over 50 hours a year that you're spending, which you go, well, that's, whatever, that's 50 hours is 50 hours. But if you divide that by a standard 8-hour workday, I mean, you're talking about a full week of work that you're spending on email. And if you had a VA sorting all of that for you, screening it, only letting you see the stuff that you need to see and not see the stuff that you don't need to see, and you save 15 minutes a day, it adds up in a hurry. And then you multiply that by 5 different tasks. Well, all of a sudden you're saving almost a full month's worth of work. So I hear, business owners will tell me, I'd really love to go on a vacation. I just don't have the time. I'm like, I can look at your day right now and I can find 15 minutes a day of stuff you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, that a VA could be doing. And now you got yourself a full week's off every year that you can take a vacation finally. And so it's, social media marketing is another thing, content production, video editing, even like a podcast like this, editing a podcast. My wife has a podcast. She has a virtual assistant that I helped her find. That's all she really does is help her find edit the podcast. She publishes it for her. She creates the social media promotional materials, and then she sends them over to my wife, and my wife posts them. Her name is Jelly, the VA. They always have the greatest names too, Jelly. Jelly, she could easily post those for my wife if she wanted her to. And Jelly works for me, and she does my social media at Katuva. She does all the content and the captions and everything. I used to monitor the captions, like I used to read them, but now I don't even really do that because she knows English so well and she writes what I need her to write. It took a little while, a little bit of a learning curve, like with anything. But take the social media piece off. Let's say you take pictures, your tattoo artists are taking pictures of their clients' work, doing maybe like before and after type stuff. They did touch-ups or, here's a cool design we did. And they take that and they just airdrop it or send it off to their VA. They could take a whole week's worth of content. They could take pictures on one day, upload. Now they got content for a week, and the VA is actually managing all that. They don't have to do it. So instead of spending 6 to 10 hours a week on creating content for social media and posting, they spend maybe an hour or two on one day a week, and they save that 4 hours a week, 5 hours a week. So there's a million little things like that, though. I mean, let's say, they want to set up a Facebook ad, or they want to create some sort of a lead magnet, like an opt-in, like a coupon maybe, or something, a free consult page where people can opt in and generate a lead. Your VA can build all of that out. So then a lead comes in. What do you do with that lead? Well, most people call them. If they don't get a hold of them, they maybe try to call them again, or they send them an email. If they don't get any response, they let them go, and that lead dies. There's no reason for that. Your VA can go in and build out a whole back-end process that includes text messages, emails, phone calls, structure all that out where it fires automatically, use a CRM of some kind. And all of a sudden, you're staying in touch with your leads and you start to convert them. I got a client just a couple of months ago. He sells a higher ticket item, but he was getting 7 to 8 leads a week. And I was like, well, what's your close rate on him? And he said about 10%. And I said, what do you do to follow up? And he's like, nothing. I call him once. If I get him on the phone and close him, I close him. If I don't, I move on to the next guy. I'd love to follow up. I just don't know how to do it, and I don't have time. So we got him a VA who was an expert in building out automations and follow-up systems. Took her about 2 weeks to build the whole thing because he was literally keeping people inside of a spreadsheet. So she had to build it all out, create all the systems and everything. But once he did that, his close rate went from 10% to 40%. He quadrupled his business without even doing another thing, not even getting new leads, nothing. So people are always saying, I need more leads. It's like, you probably need to follow up on the ones you get better and start there, because that's the lowest hanging fruit. These are people who have already asked you for help. They've already indicated interest. And he told me, he said, the interesting thing is that bump of that 30%, so go from going from 10% to 40%, that extra 30% on the back end, he said the bulk of that comes after the 4th or 5th contact. Mm-hmm. So he's like, if I would have stopped even at 3 contacts or 4 contacts, I might not have closed them at all. I might have just lost them. But because she was able to build that out, I was able to increase the close rate so dramatically. So this is a tangential. We talked about this before the call started, but a tangentially related business, but very much the same as a tattoo shop, is a jiu-jitsu academy that we're working with. I do jiu-jitsu, and I told him, I was like, in a nice way, but I was like, dude, you guys' marketing sucks, man. Like, you're lucky I came back, because I came in, somebody kind of said hi to me casually, And that was really it. I had to come back and like I had to bug them to take my money, and it's like, um, you guys could do so much better. And so I was showing them like, what happens is they're running Facebook ads. Somebody fills out a form, they say they're interested or whatever. And very much like a tattoo artist who is tattooing people all day long and they maybe can't get to that lead. And so that person moves on to the next one. These guys are in the same boat. They're teaching classes. So they can't follow up on the lead right away. Well, we have a VA now that as soon as the lead comes in, she actually calls and she says, hey, can I schedule an introductory class for you? And they've started converting way more leads by doing that. So even though those are two different businesses in theory, the process and the model are very much the same. And so tattoo artists could do exactly the same thing that we're doing for like a jiu-jitsu academy. Almost the same.
Yeah, and I think that would be one of the, at least to see an immediate return, one of the best things tattoo artists or tattoo shop owners could use a VA for, because that is one of the biggest things we see. There's like a consultation request comes in and there's there's one, hopefully maybe two, at the most 3 attempts to reach out to that person. And then it's just on to the next. And like you said, there's been a ton of studies done. It needs to be like at least 6 to 8 touch points. And if you already have that person's information, they've already expressed interest in working with you, like they're interested. There's no reason to give up on it.
So I went into a tattoo shop not too long ago. I don't have any tattoos at all. This was going to be like a first time thing for me. I don't know what to expect. I'll walk in, I'm like looking at the guy and telling him kind of what I'm looking for. He hands me a business card and says, yeah, go look at my Instagram. If you like what you see, whatever. And I left. That was a year and a half ago. I never heard anything. And they didn't try to get my name. They didn't try to get my email. Nothing, and I'm still like on the fence about maybe I do a tattoo. I might go back to them. I might not. But they don't have any control over that. Whereas if they would have gotten my contact info and kept me on a drip campaign of some kind, they might have had a better shot at converting me. I'll tell you an interesting story. Back when I was doing marketing in a marketing agency, we had a little internal call center that would follow up on leads. We would work the leads for 6 months. So that when I got assigned to a sales guy, he would work that lead for 6 months. If he didn't convert them in 6 months, the lead got moved over to what we would call a back burner file database. And the back burner database, we would stay in touch with them with email and various things like that. But anytime we hired a new sales guy, we gave him the quote unquote dead leads. Those were the leads that were on the back burner database. Invariably, they would start calling through that database and they would sell $10,000 to $15,000 a month in that database. And some of these leads were 4 years old, So a lead is not dead. The only time a lead is dead is if they literally die, or they tell you to go F yourself. That's it, man. Other than that, follow up.
Yeah, and your story about walking into a tattoo shop that you just had is kind of funny, because I had another person on this podcast about 6 weeks ago who's not a tattoo artist. He's a marketer, and he had the exact same experience. Yeah. Walked into a shop, told him he was interested. The guy's like, yeah, look at our work online, and if you're interested, let me know. Like, you're going into the shop, you're literally talking to that person.
Some tattoo artists created a course on how to do this stuff, and that's what they're teaching them. Have them walk in, tell them to go look at your Instagram page. And that's it. That's the model.
Oh, that's brutal.
Well, and look, to be never, not to be unfair to tattoo artists, because they're not the only ones that do that. Almost every business on the planet does it that way. Nobody really ever gets this right, and it's not their fault. It's not our fault. Not my fault that nobody gave me a manual on how to run a business. I didn't know about how to do any of this stuff. You got to learn it, and it's trial and error mostly is how we learn this stuff, and looking around at other successful businesses and trying to model what they do. The problem with that is you only see the tip of the iceberg of what they're doing. You have no idea what's going on the back end. But it's worth figuring out, because it could mean the difference between, like my other client, it could mean the difference between a 10% close rate and a 40% close rate. You ask any tattoo artist on the planet, would you like to quadruple your revenue? The answer is a resounding yes. Nobody's saying no to that.
Yeah, and the best part about, like you said, quadrupling or even if you doubled or tripled it, those are people that are
20%.
interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this isn't costing you anything additional to get this extra revenue,
Right.
get these extra clients in your seats. They've already expressed interest. So it's free.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of going back to the VA stuff. So I mean, I have tried hiring multiple VAs, and this is why I like your method so much. Because, I mean, really, if someone that is listening to this is like, man, I'm going to go do that. Where do I start? How do I get it right? Like, it's a process.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it is.
and it's a trial by fire because you're going to mess up so many times doing it. Because there's so many little nuances. I mean, I remember when you told me about the holidays over there, how different they are from over here, and the 13th month and stuff like that. So, and I have worked with a company before years ago that hired a VA for me, but kind of like you were mentioning, it was very focused on the VA. And when I got them, I was like, okay, how do I handle this? How do I communicate with them? Yeah. So it sounds like what you're doing is you're solving both of those problems. You're already vetting and finding the VAs, and then you're actually helping the tattoo shop owner or the business owner with how to use them the most efficiently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I can go through that process if you want, like from start to finish, what that Empower Plus program looks like, because we basically serve two types of clients. The first type of client is somebody that's never hired a VA before. They're sort of maybe intimidated by the process, or they don't know where to start. They're like, I don't even know. Like, I had a client not too long ago. Her name is Megan, and Megan is a women empowerment business coach type person. So, teaches women how to speak from stage. Mostly, is her niche. And she said, I wanted to hire a VA. I've wanted to hire a VA for about a year now. I just didn't know where to start. Even when I Google how to hire a VA, I get so much information that's conflicting and overwhelming. And she's like, the thought of just trying to go through that process on my own paralyzed me to inaction. And so the first thing that we do when someone enrolls in the Empower Plus program is we have the first call that we do is a kickoff call, where we kind of ascertain their goals and what tasks they need done, like their lowest hanging fruit. What's going to move the needle the most? What's the most frustrating part of your day right now? Can we offload that onto the VA's shoulders? And then we have them, like I said, we have them take a DISC profile, DISC assessment. And
can you explain
using that
information?
What's that?
Can you explain what the DISC profile is?
Oh, yeah, the DISC. So the DISC personality assessment, D is for dominance, I is for influence, S is for steadiness, C is for compliance. So you're going to score a range on each one of those profiles. So, for example, my dominant profile is a D, which is dominance. Most entrepreneurs, salespeople types, they're high D, high I sometimes. Mostly high D, dominant, very type A personality, etc. I's are more of like salespeople usually will score higher. Extroverted people will score higher on I. It's influence. They're very charismatic, whatever. And then you've got S. Those are steadiness. Those are kind of the people that you think about, the people who they're always there on time. They're super loyal. They're very steady Eddie type people. You give them a task and they're going to get it done. And then you got C, which is compliance. Think engineers, accountants. They're like very structured, very process oriented. If you give them a task to do, if you give them a set of like an order to do, they'll fulfill it. If you give them a checklist, they love that because they'll check off all the boxes. High C's are not going to be great at like thinking of things to do. So they're not going to be great at strategy, for example. A high D and a high I, they're going to be really good at strategy, but they suck at execution. So one of the mistakes I made early on is I'm a high D. I had my very first VA. Her name was Merlin. Again, they always have the greatest names. So Merlin, she was also a high D. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, that's great because we're the same. I need somebody like me. But what happened is we just butted heads. And she was kind of stubborn like I am, a little hard-headed. So I said, okay, I need to find somebody that's either a high S or a high C. And I found somebody that was a high S and they could take orders very well and then go execute on them for me. So I was like, they were the order to my chaos. And you kind of need that balance. So what we do is we take, okay, here are the skills you need. Here's what you are on the DISC profile. We're going to go find 3 qualified, vetted candidates that meet those criteria. They have the skills you need and they complement your disc profile. And on call number 2, then we get 3 candidates together and we schedule them on a call with you back to back to back. So 20 minutes each. And again, those calls are relatively short because you're not trying to interview them to determine whether or not they're skilled or not. We already know they are because we've already vetted them. We've already given them a task. We pay them. Out of my own pocket, I pay them to do a task to make sure that they actually have the skills that they say they have. And we've done multiple interviews with them at that time, checked references, all the different things that you do. So we've already done all that legwork. So all we're really doing with the client on that call number 2 for those 20 minutes is trying to determine personality fit. You hire for personality and you train for skill. That's my motto. So they go in there and they say, they interview each other. We record the call. We send that over to the client if they want to go back and rewatch it. Most of the time, the client goes, I really resonated with candidate A or B or C. I want to go with them. And one of the biggest things we get, biggest pieces of feedback on those calls that we get is sometimes they find it, they're like, it's kind of hard to choose because they're all so good. And I'm like, well, that's because you're getting the cream of the crop. Like when we run a job ad, we'll get 80 to 90 applications for one position. We have to weed it all the way down to the top 3. So you're literally getting like the skim off the top of that thing. So then you make a decision. Okay, that's phase 1 of the Empower Plus program. Once you've made a decision, we move to phase 2, which encompasses call number 3. And call number 3 is 3 parts. The first one is a traditional onboarding. So we help you onboard your new employee. You get them, if you want to set them up like a branded company email, if you want to give them access to like your social media channels, if they're going to run your social media for you, we actually get them a VPN so that they can log in through a United States IP address. And that cuts down on getting locked out of accounts, et cetera. A lot of clients elect to use something like LastPass. So they set up a LastPass account for the VA. They give them a username and a password that gives them access to all the things they need. And then if the VA ever leaves or whatever, they just change that VA's or they delete that VA out of the LastPass. And they don't have to change the passwords on every single account they have. So there's stuff like that. Traditional onboarding. We send the client an employee agreement or employer agreement that they sign with Katuva, lays out all the expectations. Then we send one to the VA themselves. It's an employee agreement they signed with us, laying out expectations. And you're off and running. So that's the day 1 start date of the employee for you. Part 2 of that call is a training call or a training portion where we teach the business owner and the VA how to create standard operating procedures for tasks. So for example, I had a blogging task that I needed done. And we on Katuva, if you go to katuva.com and look at our blog, we publish 2 blog articles a week. And by we, I mean my VA does that because I don't do it. Well, we didn't know how to do that at first. I had to figure it out. So I went and I said, I think these are the steps we need. I made a list on a Google Doc, 12 steps. And I sent it over to my VA. And then what I did is I shot a Loom video, so a screen capture. I shot a video of myself doing it. I recorded that and I sent that over to my VA, Jelly. I said, Jelly, figure out what the actual steps are. She went back and had that thing transcribed and then pulled out all the actual steps. Well, there weren't 12 steps. There were 45 steps. I didn't know that because I was dumb and didn't do it before. But we figured it out. And so then she took that and turned it into a standard operating procedure document, a checklist, step-by-step guide. So now anytime a new VA comes in or if we want to assign this out to somebody else on our team, I just give them the SOP document. They watch the video and they're up to speed in 15 minutes instead of 3 days or 4 days, or even worse, trying to figure it out on their own every single time. So as part of this program, we teach the VAs how to default to creating standard operating procedures. I had a client send us 4 referrals, which was great. Closed all 4 of them. I was like, hey, Mylene, let's send Jody, the client. I said, let's send her a gift. Send her some flowers or something. So I go to bed. They're 14 hours ahead of us. So it's like Christmas morning every day when I wake up having work completed in my inbox. I wake up the next morning with a spreadsheet with all these different options for flowers. Mylene said, pick whichever one you want. I'll take care of the rest. So I did. She's got access to my bank accounts. Mylene could clean me out if she wanted to because I give her access to everything. But I have that level of trust. We've been working together for 3 years. Anyway, I make a decision. Mylene goes and orders the flowers from the card with a card on file and sends a gift out. Well, okay, that's all well and good. But what Mylene also did was she documented that process, the step by step. So now if I need to do it again, we just hand that off to the VA and say, hey, we need to order a client gift. Here's the SOP for it. So every single task inside their business now is getting turned into a replicatable system. And that's what we teach in that second part of that call is how to actually do that. And it's pretty slick, that whole piece. Part 3 of that then is about communicating and managing that VA. Now that you have them operating and trained up on how to do SOPs and how to communicate with them, or task them out rather, you need to know how to communicate with them. And then we use another personality assessment for that. We call it Enneagram. Are you familiar with the Enneagram? You ever heard of that? It's pretty slick, man. I've been married. I'll be married 25 years this year. Without the Enneagram, I may have been divorced 5 years ago, probably 4 years ago, because it literally saved our marriage. It's unbelievable. You're either a 1 through a 9 on the scale, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And I'm an 8. They call us 8 holes. So I'm not sure why they call us that. But my wife is a 1. So I'm very direct, very impatient, make a decision right now, kind of a way. And my wife is a 1. She's very thoughtful, methodical, very measured, very clear delineation between what is right and what is wrong. There's no gray area with 1s. It's either black or white. And I'm much more chaos and she's much more order. So if I ask her, where do you want to go eat? She might stare at me for 3 minutes because she's just thinking about it and processing that info. And I'm like, good Lord, could you make a decision already? And that's kind of how I am. But now that I understand that's how she thinks and processes information, I'm able to step back and go, okay, I can be more patient with her. And then she, on her side, she also knows if I'm snappy or impatient, she's just like, oh, he's just being an 8-hole again. No big deal. And it's really changed everything. So anyway, we have the client take the Enneagram. We have the VA take the Enneagram. Believe it or not, even if you travel 8,000 miles around the world, the Enneagram still applies because people are people at their core. And it's unbelievable how much they are able to then establish a working relationship by understanding one another's behavior. And so that's what we teach in call number 3. Calls 4, 5, and that's phase 2. Then we move to phase 3, which is calls 4, 5, and 6. Those are 30 minutes each, and they're kind of an over-the-shoulder look. So what we do is we say at the end of call 3, we go, okay, what are you guys going to work on this week? Here are the tasks. And then we get on call 4, and we go, okay, how'd you do? Did you get everything done? Do you need some feedback? Do you need resources, help from our side, whatever? And then we go, okay, what are you going to work on this week? And then on call 5, same thing. How'd you do? What are we doing next? And then call 6. And so we're kind of just lengthening out the leash as we go. And by the time they get to the end of call 6, they're off on their own and running seamlessly hand in hand with the new virtual assistant. They know exactly how to train them. They know exactly how to communicate with them and exactly how to manage them for maximum productivity. And they're off and running. That's the program in a nutshell.
Awesome.
That took me 6 years, hundreds of thousands of hours, it feels like, tens of thousands of dollars to create a trial and error, screwing it up, getting it wrong, tweaking it, making it right. And then finally it runs like clockwork, and I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, sounds like you guys have really ironed out all the issues that, at least that I've seen when hiring VAs and using them in the past.
Yeah.
There's just so many things you don't think of until you actually hire that person. You start working with them, and it's just in my experience, when I did it for the most part, because I didn't have all these things like personality issues and people not showing up to work, and it's just like hiring a person in the U.S., but you can never when I did it myself, I never actually met him, so it was a disaster. So it sounds like you guys really have that dialed in.
Yeah, we do. We really do. And the success rate on it is really, really high. We haven't had it happen. I'm sure we will at some point. It'll happen where it's just not a fit, or it didn't work for the client or whatever. But we take so many measures to make sure that doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened yet in 3 years. I'm sure one day it will. Nobody's perfect, and we're dealing with humans at the end of the day. But for right now, we really have tried to plug all the holes as much as we can.
So one of the questions I had, and it was something you had, kind of briefed over. Well, I guess I heard you mention it. If somebody is hiring them here in the U.S., like let's say a tech shop owner hires one for whatever reason, follow up leads, stuff like that. Will they work U.S. times because they're, the 14-hour difference?
Yeah, you can. You can ask them to do that. And some of them actually, some of the VAs actually prefer it that way because they've been doing it. Um, I try, unless it's absolutely necessary, I try to steer clients away from asking them to work a graveyard just because I've read so many studies about how terrible it is for your body and your mental health and all these things. That said, there's a lot of them that do, and then we can also set up some overlap. So, for example, for the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, the VA starts at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 4 a.m. Filipino time. And then they work from 4 a.m. They work an 8-hour shift. So they're working from basically 2 to 10 p.m. From 2 to 6, they're following up on leads, calling, emailing, doing that kind of stuff. And then from 6 to 10, they're updating the CRM, they're creating the social media content for the next day or the next few days or whatever it is. And they're doing all the back end admin tasks and that kind of stuff. So it kind of works out by having that overlap. We have a real estate company that has 4 VAs with us right now. 2 of them are full-time, and they're basically data entry people where they overview listing documents. So when the real estate agent fills out the listing document, the VA then is in charge of making sure that all that information is correct. So square footage is right, number, but whatever. They work a full 8-hour shift, and they work 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with an hour break Mountain Time. So it's overnight for them. It's 11 p.m. at night till the next morning for them, and they're okay with that. So it really just depends. Most of our clients, they have a part-time VA. They'll work from 5 p.m., which is 7 a.m. in the Philippines. So they'll work from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Mountain, because most of the stuff, it doesn't matter when it gets done, what time of the day it gets done, just as long as it gets done. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, for cutting up social media or anything that isn't actually communicating with other people, I could see, it doesn't really matter what time it is.
If the VA is spending 30 minutes or an hour a day going in and updating the CRM, making notes and moving them to tagging them properly and, updating contact information, there's always a bunch of things like that need to be done to clean up that database. They can do that whenever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Honestly, man, you've piqued my interest about work with you guys. Right now, my entire team is locally here in Wenatchee. And we are in a town of 50,000 people in the middle of nowhere. It's all agriculture. So,
well, I didn't know this when you invited me on, but there was going to be a sales call for me.
I wasn't planning on it, man. But hearing you talk, I'm yes, it's I got all the things.
I'm telling you, Jesse, it's the weirdest thing, man. This is the first business I've ever been in where all I have to do is talk about it, and they're like, I want to buy this. This is amazing. And it really is, because it is amazing. It's an amazing program. It gets results. And I can't even take most of the credit for it. I built this thing on the back of these Filipino workers, man. I mean, they're just so good. They make me look good because they're so good. And it's a pleasure to be able to work with them. One of the things I talked about, the 3 phases. There's actually a phase 4 to that Empower Plus program, which is an ongoing support training. So we have a private Facebook group called VA Ignite. It's just for the VAs. I do 2 live monthly trainings in there with them about marketing, system building, and operations, all these different things. We use a CRM called Go High Level, and I've been teaching them. Yeah, I've been teaching them how to use High Level because a lot of our clients, they like their spreadsheets. They're like, here's my leads. They're on a spreadsheet. I'm like, dude, come on, put them in a CRM. Let's do this right. It's 2023, for God's sake. And then the VA actually manages that, and they can build landing pages, and they can build email automation, follow-up systems, text message follows. All of that is housed right inside of High Level, which is so great. So I do a lot of my trainings are on High Level, how to use High Level. And we do 2 of those per month. And then the VAs, if they get stuck, they're like, hey, I'm trying to build a landing page and add a subdomain, and I'm getting stuck here. Can somebody help me? Another VA will jump in and help them. I have my clients, sometimes they go, well, can I go in that group? I want to be able to. I'm like, no, that's a safe space for the VAs. If you go in there, they'll never ask a question because there's an American in there and they don't want to lose face and feel like they don't know what they're talking about. When they're in there by themselves, though, they are very talkative with one another and very anxious to help each other out. It's been awesome. So the longer you have a VA with a Katuba, the smarter and more skilled they get. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, you know? So that's part of that ongoing support and follow-up that you get as from being a client at Katuba as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you're actually building a community with them, and that's...
I'm very, very protective of my team of these VAs. As being an 8 in the Enneagram, that's one of the characteristics. Is an 8 is a protector, and if there's people in his circle or her circle, they are very, very defensive of those people. And I care about these virtual assistants very much. They become almost like my family. You know, I care about their kids being sick and graduating from high school over there and getting their first job. And I hear these things in there, and it's like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's not like a traditional employee-employer relationship. They're almost like my family. They're like my kids almost. It's weird.
Yeah, no, makes sense, man. So let's say somebody out there listening decides like, hey, I want to do this, but I just want to try it on my own versus hiring somebody else. I want to try to save some money or something like that. What things would you tell them to look out for? Like, what would your advice be? And first, let me say, like, having gone through it so many times, more than I'd care to admit, I would honestly recommend having a company help you. And it does sound like you honestly do have the best thing going on. I've spent more money for less with other companies for VAs. But if somebody does want to do it on their own, I mean, what do you recommend?
Yeah, there are some definite sort of mistakes to avoid. I would say the first kind of mistake to avoid would be trying to hire somebody on a per project or a freelance basis or a trial or a test basis. So one of the highest core values that the Filipino people have are consistency and stability. If you can offer them stability and consistency, they will stay with you forever. They'll be very, very loyal. So that's why we don't hire. So I have people come to me all the time and go, hey, I've got a data entry thing that for the next 3 weeks, I need help on. I'm like, we're not the right people for that. Like, I'm trying to place VAs into long-term relationships. That's why we spend so much time on the vetting process and getting the right people in the room so that we can have people we know are going to be good long-term employees. So the first mistake business owners make is because they're unsure of themselves and uncertain. They're like, let's try it for 2 weeks and see how it happens. Well, the VA is going, you're going to fire me in 2 weeks. So I'm going to quiet quit on your ass for 2 weeks and move on to the next thing. But if you say, hey, I want to make this work, I'm going to pay you on the 1st and the 15th a salary, not an hourly wage. I want to just salary, which is how we do it at Katuba. We pay them on the 1st and the 15th to pay them a salary. They know exactly what to expect every 2 weeks. They know what their paycheck is going to be. They don't have to think about that and worry about that. Now they can concentrate on the work. So that's kind of rule number one. It's tempting to want to do a freelance or project basis type thing, but I'm telling you, your rate of failure goes way, way up when you do it that way. The second thing is to make sure that you're vetting them for skills by using a paid task. So one of the mistakes I made in the beginning is I hired a graphic designer. He sent me his portfolio. It looked awesome. I was like, man, this guy's super talented. Let me hire him. So I did. And the first project I gave him, the work came back. It looked like a 3rd grader did it in paint. You know, I'm like, what? Wait, this doesn't match your portfolio at all. Well, it turned out he ripped the portfolio off. It was like work that he found that he liked, that he thought he could do, but he couldn't. So now what I do, if I'm hiring for a graphic designer, for example, I'll send them a task and say, hey, here's a flyer I need designed. And then I pay him. I'll pay him something nominal, $10 maybe, but I pay him because I want them to know that I'm not trying to just take advantage of them to get free work. But that way I can see that they actually know what they're talking about. So we have this one task, and you can do that for almost anything, not just graphic design. Like, for example, we have a task for people who want to hire somebody that's very organized, like for data entry, and mistakes are critical, like you can't make a mistake. I test them with a pretty, I thought it was a pretty clever task. I a document that listed like 19 step by step. Here's what you need to do for this task. At the very top, though, it says, please read through each of the steps carefully before you begin. And then we get on a live Zoom. Mylene, my VA, gets on a Learn call or a Zoom call with them and does a live screen share and watches them do the task. Well, in step 9, it says, ignore everything that you've read up to this point and just send an email back to Toby that says mission complete so that we know that you read through the steps first. And it's amazing. About half of them will fail that. They'll start working. They'll read it and then they'll go step 1, they'll do it. Step 2, do it. Step 3. And then they get to step 9 and they're like, oh crap. You can see it in their eyes. They're like, oh man, I messed up. But that's how you weed out for like being detail oriented. So there's little tricks like that we use that I've honed over the last several years to kind of vet them. That's kind of number 2 is I would vet them with a paid task. Number 3 is I would kind of dig into that DISC assessment. We hire with the DISC and we train and communicate with the Enneagram, but start with the DISC. If you're a high D, don't hire another high D. It's going to end in disaster. Hire a high S or a high C. Unless you need somebody that can work very independently and autonomously that you don't need to give a lot of oversight to. But if it's somebody that you're giving tasks to and saying, hey, here's a checklist of things I need you to get done, a D is going to be your worst nightmare. So those are kind of the top 3 things I would say right out of the gate. Number 4 is don't worry about any of that and just come to me. We'll take care of all of it for you.
So, I mean, honestly, that is without a doubt, at least in my experience, would be the best way to do it. I do remember the first time we met 4 or 5 years ago, and you were talking about this stuff, the putting something in, I put it in the job description, like, reply to this with the title like duck or something like this and be the middle of the job description. Yeah, only maybe 50% of people would actually read the job description, but that, that's a good
weeds out the other 50% that are not following instructions. And so, because when you're getting 80 or 90 applications, there's just no way you can go through them all in any thorough way. So by doing that, by putting in the job description, and I would also recommend, so the mistake I used to make is I'd put that up at the very top and say like, hey, to make sure that you read this, please put the word bourbon in the subject line. And then I noticed that everybody was doing it because they were just reading the first line. And then I put it in the very end. But then I was still getting a high number of people do that. And then what I realized is they read the headline and then they read the bottom. So I put it about 2/3 of the way down. And that started tripping them up because they weren't actually reading the entire job post. And we started weeding people out way more than after we started doing that. So you get these replies back, any of them that don't have the word bourbon or whatever word you choose in the subject line, you just delete them because they didn't follow instructions. Saves you a ton of time.
Definitely. And I know the biggest question I'm going to get is, where do you find these people if you want to do it by yourself?
Yeah, we use multiple job boards. The main job board, and this isn't any secret, everybody knows about this job board. It's called onlinejobs.ph. It's funny, the guy that owns it, he actually lives around the corner from me. Which I didn't even know him. I've met him multiple, and I'm like, never really occurred to me to ask him what he did for I should have. He lives in like a 12,000 square foot house. It should have occurred to me to say, hey, what do you do, by the way? Because you're freaking rich, man. Anyway, he owns onlinejobs.com or .ph with a buddy, another guy who lives down in Utah. Anyway, onlinejobs.ph. There's multiple job boards out there that you could use, but that one's kind of the elephant in the room. And you can get an account on there. They have a pretty slick way to do it. But yeah, you just go and put a job description in or whatever.
Yeah, and in the past, that's the job board that I always use because it's just people from the Philippines, correct?
Yeah, it's just Filipino people. Yeah.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, it's like $100 a month to do it. I mean, obviously,
I think it's $69 a month.
That might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, $69 a month. We have we pay per year. I think it's like $300 a year because we're hiring all the time. But once you hire somebody, you can cancel it, and you don't have to keep paying the $69. So that's kind of nice.
Definitely. I know I've taken up almost about an hour of your time. Any other things that you can think of that would be helpful for shop owners?
I think just the biggest thing is getting clear on what you actually need. Don't try to hire a superhuman that can do everything. So, like, I've had people come in and go, I need somebody that can do my books and run my payroll and edit my videos and create, I need them to do logos and graphic design stuff for me. And I need them to, and it's like, nobody can do that. You wouldn't expect an American to have all those skills. I don't know why you expect a Filipino to have all those skills, but make a list of the tasks that you need done and then maybe try to group them into buckets like marketing, operations, or HR, or finance, whatever, and then hire based on those skill sets, hire individual people. At Katuva, it's very common for a client to have multiple part-time VAs. So they might have 2 or 3 VAs with us that are all part-time that stay in their own lane. So they got a graphic designer, they got somebody that's managing their social media and their marketing, they got another person that's managing their books and their payroll and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of dice that up into different categories and buckets for jobs.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear, because I definitely have seen some of the resumes, and it does look like they can do everything. And what you really think is they probably can't do any of them very well.
Yeah, there'll be a jack of all trades, and they can do all of them okay. But if you need somebody, for example, that's really, really good at graphic design, you don't want somebody that doesn't have a background in graphic design. Somebody that's self-taught. You want somebody that's actually a designer. And one of the ways I get around that is I ask them, I say, what tools do you use for graphic design? If they tell me that they use Canva, they're probably not a graphic designer. If they tell me, yeah, I use Illustrator, Photoshop, then I know they're a graphic designer, just based on the tools that they use. Which is not to say that a real graphic designer won't use Canva, because sometimes they will. But if they don't know Illustrator, don't know Photoshop, chances are they're not a classically trained graphic designer. And if that's what you need to look for that.
That makes sense. Where can people find you? Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I know you're probably huge in TikTok, so
yeah, we actually have a TikTok account. I haven't even started on it yet. It's just, dude, we got so many things going, man. I do have a VA. She keeps reminding me. She's like, "You want me to start your TikTok channel? I need you to get on a call. We talk." She keeps reminding me, and I keep going, "Yeah, I'll get to it." I never do, but Katuva.com. KATUVA.com. That word Katuva, it came from, there's a Filipino word, Tagalog, called katuwang, which means partner. And so I took KATU, I took Katu from that, and then I just tacked VA on the end of it. Because that's really what we're trying to do, is find you a VA partner who has a vested interest in your business. The main reason I chose that name was because the domain was available, if I'm being honest, but had to make something up.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
But it fit.
Okay, so your website, do you guys have an Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, we have an Instagram. Same. It's I think it's Katuva HQ. Same on Facebook, Katuva HQ. There's a link in our bio and on our website as well. What I would recommend, if people are interested in this and want to learn more, they can schedule, we call it an exploratory call. It's basically an overview of this program that we kind of just talked about. I can answer their questions. That call's with me. So I get on and we can talk about options. And if they decide to move forward with Empower Plus, we have some different options for that as well on how to get involved. Obviously, there's investment in that. I tried to make it really affordable, though, and accessible to everybody. It's a no-pressure call. I'm not a hard sales guy. My take on it is, by somebody signing up for Empower Plus or not signing up for Empower Plus, that's not going to materially impact my life. Whether you decide to move forward with me or not, I'm going to wake up the next day and train my VAs and do all these things. My life is not going to change a whole lot, whether you decide to do it or not. Your life, however, is going to change drastically. And that's what I tell people. It's like, this isn't for me. This is for you. And if you're ready to eliminate the overwhelm and the chaos and get the back burner ideas in the back of your head out into the world and actually done, this is one of the most elegant, sophisticated ways I've seen have that happen.
Yeah, and at the price point you were talking about, even if someone just went part-time, $600 a month, like if you had If a shop owner hires somebody just to go through all their Instagram followers that are local and DM them, or go through all the people that have requested a consultation or all their past clients, like you only need 1 or 2 tattoos to pay for that. Like
build out those systems. Yeah, I mean, you're limited only by your imagination.
Yes, 100%. Well, thank you, man. I massively appreciate this.
Yeah, you bet.
Good talking to you.
I appreciate you having me on.
I'll let you know next time. Yeah, no, it was a good chat. And I'll let you know the next time I'm down in Boise, and we'll have some bourbon.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Okay, thanks, man.